Hello, and welcome to Journey to SEA 2025. This is your host, Shellyan Edwards Barron, your creative writing specialist here to talk to you about reports, narratives, and comprehension. Now, thank you for taking your time to look at this video. Today, we're going to be talking about a few things that I do with my students as we get closer to the exam to help them really maximize on the time left. Now, in the past few weeks, I've been sharing previously recorded videos with tons of information. And if it is you think you're still needing to, double down on a couple things, get some insight into different skills and strategies, feel free to go through the archives. They're on my website, woodcoach.com. Just go to the Journey to SEA 2025 tab, or you can look at the Facebook page, Creative Writing and Comprehension for Primary Schools. You can find all the information there. Or if you're looking for something and you can't find it and you're not too sure, WhatsApp me at 717-4993 and I'll guide you to where the content information is. Now, at this point, with just a few weeks left going into the exam, students should really be refining their writing, looking at strategies to fill in the gaps where they might still be losing marks, and really getting into the detailed kind of feedback and making critical choices about what to work on at which time. So, one of the things that I was thinking about as I was preparing for this episode is that, sometimes we think that more is better. And I believe I've said this before, but more isn't always better. At this point, we want to be as strategic as possible. And so, as I go through this episode, I'm not going to go into all the details that I had originally planned because I feel like paying attention more to the feedback and the way you give the feedback and the kind of strategies that you use, that is way more important. So go to the archives, get the background stuff and the details and the foundation stuff that we've done all the explanations for, but also pay attention to what it is we're going to be talking about today. So the first thing, as always, even in this abbreviated version, today is going to be a short session. um, I want you to think about the fact that, you know, there are lots of different ways to do things, but there are some ways that will be more efficient than others. And when I say efficient, I mean we'll be getting things done in a faster space of time with less effort. And so that's what I'm hoping to share with you today, so that once you practice what I'm talking about, then you'd be getting more done in less time. And we know that time is a factor that we're paying attention to right now. So let's get into it. And I'm going to give like some general tips and then explain what I mean. So the first thing for this week, in terms of when I say this week, I mean in the weeks to come, including this one. Um, when it comes to writing, students should be writing at least one report and one narrative right now, not just one or the other. Right now, we're getting as much practice as possible, so you want more writing. Now, lots of students in school would be doing the practice tests, mock tests, and so on. But at home, you also want to have, in addition to that, have them practice writing at home and then get feedback on it. So whether you're sending it to the class teacher or the lessons teacher, or you're going through giving the feedback yourself, you want students to be writing at least one story and one report every week in addition to what it is they're doing at school. And of course, you're timing it, going through the process, and having them discuss and implement the things that they would need to get the marks that they're missing. So that's the first thing to overall, right? Now, you want to create checklists. So what I do with my students, we brainstorm the things that they are having challenges with, the things that they don't remember as often, and we create a checklist. So they would each have a list of about, 5 to 7 things that they're working on in general, or sometimes we also do a list of these are the things that make a great narrative. Now, at the beginning of the practice that we're doing, I usually give them a list and tell them, okay, this is what makes a great narrative. We discuss it and so on. Now, we're looking at their understanding because they need to know what is required of them and what would make a great report or a great narrative. And so they are creating their own checklists now. What makes a great report? What makes a great narrative? That's where they start. And they would also make a list of things that they believe that they need to pay attention to. Because the students, they know where they're lacking, they know where the marks are being lost, because for the most part, teachers have been telling them. If it is that you have not been getting feedback from your teacher at all, reach out to lessons teachers, reach out to anyone in the groups. When I say anyone, I mean, teachers who could give you feedback, tutors who can give you feedback, because you really absolutely need to have that feedback to know what is the issue, why your child or students are getting the marks that they're getting. If they're getting 16, we need to know what is giving them that 16, where the other 4 marks are going. If they're getting 10, we need to know why are they getting 10? What is missing and what do they get those 10 marks for? So you absolutely need to have that critical analysis of the grading so that you know where your student stands. As it is right now, going into the exam and the time that we have left, wherever your child is, you are still with enough time. Once you use the strategies effectively, you still have enough time to refine that mark and gain at least 2 to 3 marks in addition to what they're having now, depending on how severe the challenges are. Student who's scoring 10 could score 16 on the exam, even with this still 3 weeks, if you know exactly what they're missing and have them practice adding it in. You can still get students to increase their mark between now and the exam. Not by 6 and 7 and so on, but by at least 2 to 3 once we can have that laser clarity on what is required. So that's where you want to start. Create the checklist of what is needed, what makes a good story, what makes a good narrative. Create a checklist of the challenges that the student has so that they know what they're looking for when they're reviewing their writing, and you know what to look for when you are reviewing their writing as well. And so that's the first thing, the checklist. And then, of course, as I said, we're writing every week, at least one of each. You can write more if you have the time. Finally, you want to give a detailed analysis of each report and each narrative that the student writes. And so what you're doing is not just saying, okay, focus on this, focus on that. We want to say what was done well. Definitely identify what was done well so that they can continue doing it, and then identify where you think the marks are going. And then after that, make a list of 3 things the student will be working on. So when you go through, you might say, okay, they have issues with punctuation, like commas, and then full stops, or dialogue formatting, and you might have a list of like 7 or 8 things. Go through that, identify the ones that would yield the most results, give the most marks, and focus on the top 3 of those. All right. So when we're giving detailed feedback, this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. So when you say something like, okay, pay attention to commas. Let's say the student has a challenge with commas, you tell them pay attention to commas. This is not really actionable to the point where it would yield a result to gain marks. What are they doing? They're looking at the commas. That's it. They're paying attention to it. They're focusing on it. That's not what you want them to do. You want them to have an action, a very clear action in their mind about what it is they're going to do the next time they write. And so this is not the kind of feedback you want to give. Let's say something more like this. Don't put commas between an adjective and a noun and the noun it's describing. So when you see, let's say a student has a challenge with the punctuation, the comma, identify what the challenge is. Sometimes students do this, sometimes they forget the commas after an interjection or an introductory word or phrase. So you want to be really specific. So in the case where you want them to put a comma after introductory words or phrases, like suddenly or all of a sudden kind of thing, for the narratives, or something like prior to the incident in a report, there's a comma that's supposed to come after that. Those are introductory phrases that function like transitions. So tell them exactly what to do. What is the issue? How to fix it. So in this case, this student was putting a comma between the adjective and the noun it was describing. So if they were talking about a black bear, they would put black, comma, bear. It's a strange thing, but that is the result of work on your adding commas, and not being specific. So the student is adding in commas, but they need to be strategic and be told exactly what to do. So at this point, we're not trying to get them to interpret, we're not trying to get them to get an overall concept. We're giving very specific, actionable steps that would yield results. Because at this point, we're crunch time heading into the exam. We're dealing with exam strategies here, not just writing strategies. We're dealing with exam strategies. And so what we're looking for is marks. And so we're doing the things that would be the most laser precision to get the marks that students are looking for. Okay? And so we want action. A student could do this. When they put it in, they see it, it's not supposed to be there, they could erase it. Or they could remember, don't put that there. There's an actual step, a thing to do, a thing to um, yield a direct result. All right? And so you really want to be as specific as possible. And then when it comes to comprehension, again, overall, you want to pay attention to the questions. Now, remember, we discussed at length the different types of questions. You have the literal, we have the inferential, we have the appreciation, we have the evaluation questions. And in addition to that, we know that fiction has a certain type of question that comes up more, that will only come up for fiction, character types of questions. We know that poetry has specific focus area questions like figurative language and the voice of the speaker. Sometimes poetry can ask you to create a title. You don't get that in other types of texts. Nonfiction, main idea questions, purpose of the passage questions. You get that primarily in nonfiction. And then with the graphic, you get those text element questions like, is this image appropriate? Is why is this text why are these words in bold and capitalized? And, what would you add to it? Those kinds of questions. So there are unique questions to each. Students need to be able to recognize that because, again, there are only 7 questions for the passage and the poem. There are only 4 questions for the graphic. So we're not really trying to get them to understand everything. We're trying to get them to recognize what each question is asking them and how to phrase a response, which takes us to the last one. Of course, we want to practice. And so they should be doing worksheets. They would be doing tons in school. Hopefully, they're doing at least one practice test, one mock test, each week. But of course, at home, you can still have practice at home as well. And in fact, you should to reinforce what teachers are doing and the skills that are needed. And so once that is being done, you want to also do that detailed analysis as you did with the writing. Detailed analysis in this case would be looking at the responses and seeing how well they match the question, what is being asked. Students can gain marks even if they have not phrased things effectively. So just double check that and make sure you're refining as you go so that they faster they're able to respond and they more precise their answers are, it'll be easier moving forward. So they're constantly practicing and dealing with that. And for this one, you want to look at what's the number one thing that you want to focus on. We can do top three, but remember in this case, we have a passage, a poem, and a graphic. If we do top three each, that's a lot for students to focus on at a time. So what you want them to do is one each. So if you're practicing fiction and nonfiction, you should be doing 4 passages each, and that's what I recommend. Most practice tests, of course, because it's a practice test or a mock exam, they'll do one or the other. You have one passage, one poem, one graphic. At home, you should be practicing with your child nonfiction, fiction, the poem, and the graphic. The reason you're doing fiction and nonfiction is because we don't know what is going to come in the exam. Sometimes there's a fiction, sometimes there's nonfiction, and it's not as simple as, well, it's a passage, so, you know, passages are passages. No, they're not. Fiction and nonfiction are different. Some students struggle a little bit more with one or the other. And so again, exam strategies, we're looking at the strategic ways and the efficient ways to get the most marks. All right. And so we want to focus on these issues. And again, just as with the type of feedback that you want to be giving with the reports and the narratives, you have to be precise with the things that you're asking a student to pay attention to so that it is actionable. And actionable means that they can actually do something. So we're not asking them to think. We're not just asking them to feel. We're not just asking them to consider. We're asking them to take action, do something. We want to be as concrete as possible. So read the text carefully to find answers. That's an action, but it's a kind of vague action. What are we looking for? What's the strategy here? Just read and understand? That's not going to really help them because they will read and read and read and spend time reading and still not understand because it's not a precise action. It's a general action that isn't going to yield much. It still relies on the student to be able to know or to identify. And if they don't have an exact strategy to know or to identify, they're still going to be stuck. So how do we revise this? Because it's not the way you want to just leave them. How do we revise this? We give precise actions. Decide the type of question. So is it literal, inferential, evaluation, or appreciation? Appreciation is how you feel. Evaluation is what do you think about? All right. What type of question is it? If it's a literal question, students should know. We need keywords to go into the passage. We'll find the answer. If it's inferential, we need keywords to send us where the answer could be so that we could think about it and come up with our own answer. You know, pull things together and create a summary of what was said. If it's an evaluation question, Keywords will take us to the section in the passage that gives us an idea so that we could think about it and write our opinions. If it's an appreciation question, the keywords will take us to the passage where the situation is or the person or whoever it is that we need to say how we feel and what we, our thoughts, well, not thoughts, our feelings and emotions about, whether we appreciate or not, and what our, emotional response to this person or object or situation is. Keywords will guide us to those places in the passage. And then we have to think about how does this make us feel? So like mood and so on, mood, identifying mood and identifying tone in poetry, what we're looking at, and they'll mostly ask mood. Um, we need to look at certain words in the poem that would help us think about, how does this make me feel, these words? Does it does it make me angry, sad, happy, confused? And then we give reasons for our answer. But the keywords kind of guide us because we know where we're heading and what we're looking for. We have a strategy and a specific target for that strategy. And so we decide the question, get the keywords, and then we want you to focus on answering as briefly as possible. So, yes, we sometimes want to tell students, hey, give us a complete answer by rephrasing what's in the passage. If you pay attention to how much space students are given to give their answers, a lot of times examiners just want the straight answer. Students need to know when a straight answer is required or when we need to have that whole complete sentence answer type of thing. It sounds good, it works well generally, but remember this is an exam and we're aiming for marks. What is going to give us the most marks in the shortest space of time in the shortest way possible? That is our agenda for identifying that and working with that. And so um, this is what we're focusing on. From now on, we are in complete 100% exam mode, identifying where we're hemorrhaging marks and figuring out ways to plug those bleeds, so to speak, so that we don't lose anything. And so we do have to be as precise and detailed. So we want to go through the story, go through the report, point out everything, and then say, okay, after all of that, here's what we need to focus on three. Let's decide which three are we focusing on. And with the comprehension, what are we focusing on? What's the thing that we're losing marks? So we look at the type of questions that the student is losing marks on, and then we focus on that. But always reminding, hey, you did a really good job on questions 1 to 3 or questions 16 to 20, or whatever the case is, so that they are building confidence going into the exam. We always have to be careful about focusing so much on the negative, which is where the marks are being lost, and creating that challenge for students. So as we continue with the preparation, always take the time to say, hey, plot in this story was really good. I saw, and we're not just evaluating, remember? I saw the complication, I saw the background information, I could see each step of the rising action, and I understood why things escalated. And I see your lesson. I got the details about how the main character solved the problem and where they got the tools from to solve the problem. So I got that your plot is solid, but I'm not seeing any character description. I saw like one in the introduction, but nowhere else in the story. You're going to lose marks there. So let's see how we could fix that. So what you're going to do the next time, you're going to put a character description in paragraph 2, and you're going to put at least one character description in the last paragraph or in the second to last paragraph. You want to be precise. Tell students exactly what to do and give them opportunities to implement it. So that is the end of this session today. Like I said, it's a quick one, and I really just wanted to highlight those areas because that's really the focus. Practice feedback, practice feedback. The feedback has to be precise so that you know exactly what you're working on and how to improve the point. We're not dealing with concepts anymore. We're not dealing with the understanding things in general. Right now, we're dealing with getting the most marks as possible. So if you have any questions about more ways that you can do that, reach out to me, 717-4993. And I do have a lot of worksheets. Check the website. Not everything is up still. Forgive me, just lots and lots happening. But what's happening? If you're looking for something and you can't find it, but you heard me mention it before, you can check back previous episodes. Send me a WhatsApp, just a WhatsApp away, 717-4993. And of course, if you are a parent of a standard 3 or a standard 4, happen to be looking at this, you can follow along as well. But for standard 4s in particular, Journey to SCA 2026 is going to be resuming, well, getting kicked off at the end of April, early May. Well, we'll shift to May because of everything else happening in this country at the end of April. So we'll skip to May, so we'll be starting in May. So stay tuned for that. I'll be doing the same series with videos, but with a little twist because I'm working on a ton of worksheets behind the scenes so that we can have that. You'll have access to those. So not only am I going to be telling you what you can work on, you'd actually have the worksheets to do that. So I don't have all the worksheets done yet, but for those of you who are going into 2025, I have a lot of stuff that you could work with still. So check me, 717-4993. So I hope this has been helpful and let me know, yes or no, what you think was missing, what you need right now that you think I could help you with. And I'm happy to do what I can. Okay, so have a good one and it'll all work out in the end. I hope that you understand that, give the kiddies some hugs and kisses in between. All right. Take care, everybody.